Celebrity court news, rife as usual. At this rate, we will not run out of content. But we saw yesterday that the Z Farmer has had a call-out issued against Simon Mwewa because of some statements made on social media. And honestly, I do not have the full details. But what was interesting for me is understanding when do you actually sue, or when can a matter hold before the courts of law when you sue. And also today we talk about when law meets personal growth, some of my favorite topics, right? Anyway, back to the suing case. So, and a call out can pretty much be issued out to anyone, right? So honestly, this has nothing to do with the two parties, just because they help me draw a lesson from them. So anyone can go to the police and say, call this person because this is what has happened to me, and the police will hear your matter, right? But for a matter to hold at law, for a case to hold in the courts of law, there has to be a matter at law. So we know that the Cybersecurity Act has brought a lot of fire especially in our social media space, because people don't know what they can say, what they cannot say, and naturally people fear looking at laws because they feel like the English in there is hard to understand, or even if they do, maybe they miss something. And so everyone has just been very careful in what they say. To one extent, I think that's a good thing, because we see quite a bit of order in our social media space, and we're not having to block a lot of pages and whatnot, and now the streets are a little cleaner, if you know what I mean. So there has to be a matter at law for you to have a court case that can be heard. So let's take the example of theft. So theft, for you to sue, well, for the police to take the matter to court, there needs to be something that was taken. It was taken without your permission. There was no intention to give that thing back to you. So once these legs have been met, then we can say there is theft, and then that's what you are suing for. So there must be a provision. So even as we deal with the cyber law now, and when you're wanting to be sued, or if you're trying to say something on social media and you are not sure if what you're saying is safe or you're going to be sued for it, you can go back to look at the way the cybersecurity law is designed, and then you can decide whether what you are creating, if you meet the components of that offense. So now I will be the first to say that some of the provisions are a bit ambiguously written, so you can fit into a broad spectrum of things, and where you come out feeling like, oh, I'm not even sure if I fit into that or not. And in those cases, before you proceed, consult a lawyer so that you are not arrested. So that issue I talked about were personal growth. And speaking of Simon Mwewa and other bloggers, last week and the week before, we had heard about very devastating news about a family that lost children due allegedly to a house that had caught fire due to lightning. Now, I'll be quick to say I don't have the facts to that situation, and like most of you, the information I have is what we have seen on social media, like the house caught fire because of lightning. Another fact is the fact that the children were in the house without an adult. Now, what made this issue bring a lot of heat was the fact that we had popular social media bloggers say the reason why the children passed was because they were neglected. And everyone was so mad, and understandably so. In our reading community, we looked at the topic about emotional intelligence, right? And we talked about how there's a right time and an appropriate time to say things. And in the Zambian context, funerals tend to be very sentimental and even spiritual, and people get very, very touched about what is said when, right? So when we look at, for instance, the children code, is the children's code, which is the law that protects children in Zambia, you'll see that children have a right to survival. What does survival mean? One could broadly interpret that, on the one hand, that the parents did not act well in leaving the children alone, right? Because there's somewhere again in the code where it also insinuates or states, I wish I had looked at that actually now, where it talks about where a parent is not able to care for the child should be under the supervision of an adult. So on the one hand, when you look strictly at the fact that yes, children were alone in a home, it could bring up a legal issue. To some extent, it could bring out a legal issue, granted. But should it bring out a legal issue, or is it the right time to talk about the negligence, quote unquote, of a parent when a child is being buried? I mean, in the US, like actually the popular blogger had said, it is possible that yes, the parents may have been taken in. I don't say that by guarantee, because obviously I haven't even looked at their law on child neglect and whatnot, but they would immediately be dealing with it, right? But here in Zambia, the cultural context is slightly different. Therefore, the approach is different. We honor the dead and we allow burials to happen, which is why the Samboliamfwa happens after everyone, when the deceased has been buried, and that's when we deal with the issue. So context, there's a quote that I live by, okay, not that I live by, I try to live by because it's so hard to live by. It's the fact that you can be right but wrong at the top of your voice. So that's all I had to say about what has been happening among celebrities and conversations in these social media streets that are relating to the law.